How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, this is going to be a great topic. We're going to be talking about 11 mistakes that will get a CO or staff member hurt or killed. I think it's a great dialogue. Me and Russ have been putting our heads together. I know there's more than 11. Trust and believe we can probably do a series of these shows. But me and Russ had a nice little dialogue today. These are the first 11 that we feel happen most often. And then maybe if this does well, we will do more. Feel free to add some in the comments so we can explore it at a later date. This is going to be a very interesting dialogue. But before we start the dialogue, a couple of things. First off, guys, Inmate Manipulation Decoded is now on the market. Link to that book is in the description. It's on Amazon if you want to get it at Target, whatnot. And I also have a book hopefully coming out end of this year, beginning of next, called The Correctional Daily Reader. Working on it now. I am on January 29th. And I got a long journey to go. A long way to go. Hey, guys, I got two sponsors, American Military University. If you guys are looking to seek education, get that higher degree, American Military University is a great school, guys. They're supportive of what we do on Tear Talk. More importantly, they're supportive of the entire corrections profession. And they've been with me since day one, almost 7-8 years now of Tear Talk. I was doing this when Russ was still a rookie back in 1989. And we got, we got Guardian RFID, guys, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit GuardianRFID.com for more information. Plus, if you guys get a chance, Guardian RFID YouTube channel. It's got videos. I put videos up there. Russ, William Young, Greg Piper, Steve Menard, Mackenzie. You know, there's a lot of good videos on there that you guys may find of interest that relate to the corrections profession. Good tips, a bunch of good stuff. Russ, what's going on, man? How you been?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Anthony. Had a great day today. Keepers of Chaos just hit 5,000 members. So anyway, it's a banner day for us. This week we're going to do a slight name change that's going to be more responsive toward what I think that Keepers of Chaos represents. And so anyway, I'm just as happy as I could be today to hit that magic mark.
Are you going to surprise us with the name change, or can we know it now? Or
we can know it now. It's just that I'm probably going to maybe polish it up a little bit, but it's just going to be Keepers of Chaos, Excellence in Corrections.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Someone said if I wanted to make this YouTube channel a little bit more search friendly, to change the name, to not keep it Tear Talk, but I just can't. I'm so connected to it. So, and we'll be pushing on 19,000 subscribers soon, on our way to 20,000, which is one of our next milestones, and then pushing on to maybe 50 will be the next. Hopefully, it's slow, but it's moving. It's getting where it's got to be. I got 500 subscribers this month. That was pretty good. All right, so Russ, before we get started, what do you feel about this topic? 11 mistakes that will get a CO hurt or killed.
Well, this is the topic that people should pay attention to. Sometimes, especially if you're new to the profession, you don't necessarily understand how small things can suddenly snowball on you and put you in a really bad position, a position of disadvantage, and a position where an inmate just may decide that it's time to take you out. And it's a really bad feeling. I've been in those positions more times than I care to think about. So it's really something. If you pay attention, you might learn something, might save your life even.
All right. So that brings us to mistake number one. Guys, there's no order to this. I believe because the consequence of these mistakes is getting hurt or killed, they all have that level of importance. Russ is drinking vinegar. So
yes.
Now, yeah, I'm going to start doing that, I think.
It's good for you, man. I'll tell you what, I work out hard most every day, and it really helps with
Does that quench the thirst?
Yeah, it quenches my thirst. It helps my guts. It makes me feel less sore in my muscles. So,
You know what's funny is a definition of good CO is a CO that's full of piss and vinegar. So it works. Okay, so guys, as I said, there's no specific order. But I feel, as I said, because of the consequence of you get hurt or killed. Everything here should be taken at that level of importance. So what I'll do is I'll introduce the tip. I'll have Russ go into it, and then I'll kind of complement it, and then we'll move over to the next one because it's 11 tips. I kind of want to keep it moving, so we'll kind of have Russ be the featured person here, but I'll still add some dialogue towards the end. But let's first start off with not waiting for backup. What do you got, Russ?
Okay, you know what? This one can touch on so many areas. I refer to this one actually as, tombstone courage. You know what? I don't need backup. I don't need to wait. I'm able to handle it myself. And the true fact of the matter is you don't know whether you can handle it or not because you don't know what it might morph into. It might look like you just got two inmates fighting there or whatever. It might not be that. You could be getting suckered in. You could be part of an escape attempt. You could be part of potential hostage situations, or they just may take advantage and decide that while you're responding to something else, that they're going to jump you from behind. And having had or seen each and every one of those things just about happen to me or to people that I've been with at the moment, don't do this. Wait until you have enough backup that you stand a really high degree chance of being completely victorious. Now, at some point you got to go in, but there's other things you can do. You can be a good witness and make sure you're looking at what's happening, you're memorizing what's happening, that you're familiarizing yourself with the facial features. And sometimes these guys can get away in the crowd if you have a big yard. And just be that good witness and put yourself in a position. Maybe you can start deploying some spray, some chemical grenades or whatever, but don't just rush in there. Don't go in there willy-nilly. It's not worth it. We need to make sure that we're effective in what we do, and you can't do that if we have to go in and rescue you and someone else and an inmate and medical that showed up. And, it can just get into this endless change where instead of, stopping a fight, we're performing a rescue.
Yeah, and guys, it really is. Sometimes we're motivated by that preservation of life. Me and Russ were talking about stopping an inmate from committing suicide. A lot of us may want to go in and make that attempt to save that inmate's life, but that it could be a setup. And here we are. We open up that cell door because we have the keys to do so, not waiting for the backup. And a good attempt to save an inmate's life, good intent. But it turns out that you just sacrificed the unit. And that's why some people may not realize when a supervisor, even if you do save that inmate's life, the supervisor may still have to charge you because in the end, it's great that you saved the inmate's life. I get it. But having said that, you did not wait for backup. And what about if it was a setup? What about the inmate was doing all this to get you to open the cell? And like Russ said, now we got a hostage situation. So again, it's kind of messed up because here you are, you saved an inmate's life and, you're expecting the pat on the back. And the supervisor sits you down and said, you did not wait for backup to open up that cell door. Or another situation could be, let's say you're, the officer, let's say in a controlled area and you have your floor officer on the floor and they're doing their rounds. And all of a sudden you see that the floor officer is being assaulted. Now you want to get in there. You want to help that officer, but you got to realize something. Without the proper backup, you could open up the gate and get flooded. And now you jeopardize the response, so you have to be wary of your actions. Now, even if you do save that officer, you may get the pat on the back, but you may have some supervisors that may say, hey, I get what you did and I get why you did it. But let me tell you what could have happened if this would have went south. You abandoned your post, unfortunately, left an area open. And if you would have got taken out, we would have lost 2 areas of the prison. And I know that happens. Again, it's the motivation to protect your brother and sister. So you have to be very thoughtful of that impulse to save a life. You got to be very mindful that if you act immediately, there could be a risk if you don't wait for backup. So I think that's a great one. Now we also have number 2. Russ, go first. Not mindful of where you are.
Not mindful of where you are, not paying attention to what you are doing. This is always important. And this can be everything from just putting yourself in a position of disadvantage to, having your back turned toward an inmate or a group of inmates. One of these things that comes in is just not being what do I want to put here? Not being anti-complacent enough. Just twisting some words around there. It's just having your mind on other things and not being sure that you're carrying out the things that occur on a day-to-day basis to the best of your ability. You're mute.
Damn it. Damn it. I wanted to add something on this when it comes to not mindful of where you're at. If you're not mindful of where you're at, then it's going to be hard for other people to be mindful of where you're at. Because again, if you don't know where you are, it may be hard for other people to know where you're at. So sometimes when you're walking in your unit, and let's say you have an officer that's watching over you, there could always be blind spots, and you have to be wary of when you're in those blind spots, and if you have to go into a blind spot, maybe to check on something, let the officer know, hey, be advised, I'm stepping into the bathroom here to check on something, be mindful of that. Let them know where you're at when you feel that you're there, that you're out of their view. Because it's going to happen. I mean, I would like to think people in the Eagle's Nest can see everything, but it's not always the case. So if you know where those blind spots are for that person who's supposed to see you in the Eagle's Nest, then when you start to go in those areas, let them know each and every time that you're going into that area. And the best way to do that is to really get up in that Eagle's Nest, see how it sees the floor, so you can kind of get a perspective of what the layout is. And then when you go back down on the floor, you can know of the areas that this person cannot see, and be very mindful when you're in those areas. And again, let the person know, hey, I'm in this spot. Another good thing too is when you work in a facility that has multiple floors, there should always be communication before someone goes into the stairwells, because usually those are blind spots too. So like if you have an inmate in the stairwell, there should be no staff members in that stairwell. It should be, hold off, don't move, we got an inmate coming down. There should always be communication when there's an inmate in a stairwell. The last thing you want is to send a staff member in the stairwell the same time an inmate is either coming down or going up. So there should be some communication where, sorry, hold off, let me get the inmate out first, and then you guys can go in. At no time should staff members be in a stairwell with an inmate unless it's a controlled escort or something. But I think that, hey, Russ, we'll go to the next topic. Do you agree with what I just said?
Absolutely. It's just one more little piece of making sure that not just you're mindful of where you are, but that everybody is. And anytime there's no eyes on you, it's time to be concerned. But if you can let someone know where you're at, that's almost the same thing. Just make sure that you keep that two-way communication open.
And it's good that you just said that, Russ, because we're actually going to cross into communication right now. This is all you, Russ. Opening up the wrong cell door. Now, this is definitely communication between the person on the floor and the local control point officer.
Okay, yeah. So this one here, unfortunately, this is one of the ones that seems to happen a lot of the time. I've been involved in situations that lasted for, months or maybe even years, where every time we were getting ready to do, mass movement, all the inmates would be up there on their doors. They'd all be rattling them, hoping, hope against hope that someone would pop the wrong door. And it happened more than we like to admit. Some of it, I think, was actually, based on faulty wiring or faulty locking mechanisms. And it was really hard for us to figure out because these guys were rattling the doors. But then other times it was clearly on the, miscommunication between the floor and the person up there in the bubble. And just, they would hit, the wrong number. Maybe they were paying more attention to the radio than they were the hand signals down there. And then what happens? An inmate comes out and he's going to try and kick your ass. And that's just the way it is. And then it has to get handled. So that's a thing, if you're not sure and you're up there in that bubble, take one more look, look at him, he's raising his hand. Which door is that right next to? Don't get that confused. His hand should be on the door that he wants open at that moment in time. You should have hopefully already seen exactly who it is that's behind that door that they're cuffing up to. People use some different hand language. That was always ours. You raised your hand toward the guy up in the bubble, and you had your hand on or right next to the door that you wanted open. But, sometimes we just got those officers there that they would just get foolhardy and it would open up. And we actually had, believe this or not, our control things, because the buttons were little and it was easy to hit the wrong one or mash two at the same time. The department's solution to it was to buy games of Monopoly and put the little houses and hotels over the buttons. And yeah, that, you got a multi-million-dollar panel there and you're putting Monopoly pieces over the top of them. So you shouldn't be doing that either. Things should work as advertised or be redesigned and replaced, refurbished, whatever it takes.
Right now, usually, guys, when you work in an area that's going to have heavy radio communication, like a Sallyport area or a local control point, an officer on the floor, sometimes what they'll do is they'll switch the channel so it doesn't interfere with the regular radio call. So you may have two radios. You may have one radio that's in tune with the facility itself, but then because you're constantly in communication, obviously that you may have your own little channel to work the communications out. So technically what I would do, honestly, and I've done this before, is like, hey, Russ, open up cell 22. Russ will go back on the radio, copy that, confirming cell 22. Officer Gangi, yes, cell 22 confirmed, open please. Boom. Now we know it's in sync. And by the way, we're not tying up any radio traffic. We're on a different channel, and again, that's for when, again, you're working in a unit that's going to have a lot of communication. I know you're going to see Sallyports will be on their own as well because they're constantly clearing vehicles, opening up gates and whatnot. So same thing here. Again, just the confirmation. Russ, open 22. Russ comes back and says, confirming 22. Copy that 22. Please open. Boom. Now you got the number said 3 times, and that's usually good enough. But again, it's very important. You don't want the wrong cell door open. And guys, we already did an episode on this, so I'm not going to repeat it again. Leaving food ports open could also be dangerous, but we did a whole episode of that recently, so we're not going to explore that again. So if you guys get a chance, check it out. It's a couple of episodes in. Okay, so the next one, Russ, we have, and you're going to love this, Russ, hands in your pocket during inmate interactions.
Yeah, this is part and parcel of, putting yourself once again into that position of disadvantage. Number one, or don't even want to say number one, but just think of the different things that this leads to. An inmate that sees you with your hands in your pocket, he's not going to have that idea that you're a Johnny on the spot officer. He's going to think that he can get away with things. Maybe he's even going to think that maybe he can manipulate you a little bit because you simply don't have any perception about your situational awareness, and you've become complacent, and a person that's complacent can be easily manipulated. So that's one of the things. You don't want that to happen because you can get sucker punched, you can get rushed. Even if they're a few feet away, you're not going to have time to pull them out and react. One of the things I like to do is I always like to blade my stance to an inmate, that way I can't be pushed and bowled over. And as long as I'm talking to them, I like to talk with my hands a lot because then they're already up and they're already in a position to, parry or strike or grab or whatever I need to do. But you know what? I don't care how cold your hands are. I don't care, how relaxed you think the particular unit you're in is. It presents a danger to you to be doing that. So don't do it.
Right. And back in the day, when I was caught with my hands in my pocket, the sergeant would come by. I can't do this today, guys. It's a different dynamic now, but they would pinch me right here and it would hurt. But we weren't crybabies, and we never did it again. We never put our hands in our pockets again. And the funny thing is I'd be willing to take that pain because that's something that you need to not do, because in the end, you're lucky that's all you're getting, because an inmate's not going to be that, literally, it would be a little pinch that would hurt like hell, but it's better than an inmate popping you in the face with an elbow. So, but again, it's different now. If a sergeant was to do that today, they'd be written up and all this other things, not knowing that I get why it was done. I mean, that's something to me that we tend to do a lot. I mean, I have seen mass movements with 25 to 30 inmates out and staff just chatting, hands in their pockets, and just shooting the shit, not paying attention to the world around them. And at one point, as a sergeant, you got to look at that and say, yo, I got to wake these guys up. But then you find out that the sergeant is just as complacent, because the funny thing is the front line is going to reflect their direct supervisor. So if their direct supervisor, is sitting there being complacent and not caring, then the front line is going to be the same way. So having said that, guys, intimate interactions, hands out of your pockets. I mean, please, you should not be that comfortable with an inmate that you can have your hands in your pocket the whole time you're having that discussion. So yeah, I think that's a great one. All right, Russ, I know you're going to have a little bit of fun with this one. Not double locking the handcuffs.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So handcuffs, you know what? Handcuffs are necessary, but they can also make us complacent because we get used to them functioning pretty good on a day-to-day basis. So you go in there and, you hook the inmate up. And you know what? Maybe it's the easiest escort that you've ever done with a handcuffed inmate, but maybe he trips and falls and pinches that cuff. He injures his hand. He permanently damages it. Guess what? You're going to be sued because you know what? You didn't double lock those things. Also, if you don't double lock them, there's more ways for them to defeat the locking mechanism if they manage to have some time alone with it, as if they are on a transport or something like that. Double locking doesn't stop every bad thing that can happen, but it stops a lot of bad things. And so, that's one thing to really think about. The other part of those, is just move a little bit beyond the double locking. Just think about making sure that your handcuffs are worked, making sure that they're loaded and ready to go every day on a day-to-day basis. Make sure your keys are good, and make sure that you're not going to have any malfunctions that you could have prevented. You can't prevent everything, but you can prevent a lot of things. So, check all of those things, because you know what? It could be that your life and safety are going to depend on that piece of equipment functioning. So don't take it for granted. Don't be complacent. Don't just stick them in your pouch any which way. Check them each and every time, each and every day.
I actually have a video on handcuffing. Michael Wolford did it for us. It's a good video. If you guys get a chance, go to YouTube, put Tear Talk handcuffing, something like that, and it's going to pop up. It's a good video. It's about tactical handcuffing. So it was fun to make, by the way. These guys really are experts. They teach use of force for the state where I work. So very, very good video. All right, guys. So this one, I'll start off on this one, Russ, if you don't mind. Being a fire starter. I have a video out on this. Actually, I have a page in my Daily Reader dedicated to this. But guys, you got people in this profession that really abuse their authority. It's not even about respect for them working with the populations, about like, let me harass them a little today. Let me retaliate if they piss me off today. Let me intimidate them. And having said that, guys, it's not a way to run a unit. You want respect, you got to give respect. But having said that, fire starters have a way of uniting the inmate population. Because again, you have a rogue officer just being foolish, and all the inmates are looking at this officer like they're starting to get pissed. And this officer's actions actually putting themselves at risk, but they're also putting others at risk. I mean, you can have an officer like this working a dorm, an open dorm, just pissing people off and, causing the inmates to find that justified reason to just be foolish. Now, mind you, usually the inmates will probably go to the grievance system first when they have one of these rogue officers, these fire starters. So if management's not looking into this and, trying to track this officer, like everywhere this officer works, this officer seems to be a problem. So it's not a one-time occurrence with inmate Hamilton. It seems to be inmate Hamilton, inmate Gangi, inmate, Eileen, whatever it is. It's everywhere they work, they have a problem. Well, you may have a pattern of what could be a fire starter. And the sad thing is this is someone that we also need to police, because these are the type of officers that they come in your unit, they row it up, then they leave, and you're left with the mess. We're very familiar with that. And it's like you want to tell an officer, like, yo, you could stay here now. I'm out. You did my break in a half an hour, and I come back, my unit's in an uproar. I'm not beat for that. So, again, fire starters, they have the habit of uniting the population. And if that's not handled, guys, this shit can cause riots, cause hostage situations. Because again, you know, inmates right now they're kind of pissed. They're not being heard through management, and they're going to wind up taking measures into their own hands. Russ, what's your thoughts? I mean, you call them fire starters, rogue officers. What's your thoughts on
Yeah,
this?
Firestarter was pretty typical. I want officers that are above all else professional, right? I don't need a person to come out there and needlessly push issues that do not exist. Having said that, I do love an officer who's proactive, who manages to prevent and preempt things before they have a chance to actually get going. The ones who actually find fires that are already going and put them out. But I don't have need for someone to just try and bait people into bad situations. I would rather have that proactive individual than someone who is just there for their own entertainment.
Well, remember something too, Russ. You said something very good just now. Um, Doing your job, inmates are going to expect that, but it's how you do your job. So, again, having that position of authority is not to abuse, but you are expected to do things with that authority, and inmates are going to expect that. But how you carry it out does matter. Are you still being professional in your ways? But again, a fire starter to me, it gives a great chance for the inmates to find some justified cause to work together and take that officer off the count. That's the scary thing. And by the way, if there's a plan in motion and that officer's not there, who becomes the sacrifice now? Me, who know nothing about it. It just happens to be I happen to be there that day, wrong time, wrong place, wrong time, whatever it is. All right, so this is a good one too. Implementing a sudden change in policy that affects the inmates as a whole. And I put in parentheses here, no smoking. I'll start off on this one first to explain that thought, and then Russ, I'm sure, will cut in. There are going to be some generalized policies that may come into play that may change a lifestyle for the inmates, something they've been accustomed to. And you have to be very wary of those policies. The reason why I brought up no smoking was at one point we went to become tobacco free. And a lot of people are like, oh, screw the inmates. Just take it away. Yeah, that's not that easy if you have to enforce that. There has to be a controlled method to that because, again, that's something that's going to affect the population as a whole. That's something that can unite the inmates in their level of resistance or rebellion because it's a lifestyle. So a lot of people will come in and say, well, they're inmates. Just say it and get it done. No, because we have to enforce that. And trust and believe, this is something that is not just going to be one officer versus selected individuals. No, it's going to be one officer versus every inmate united on that cause that, hey, we like to smoke. So having said that, something like that's going to cause a sudden change in the lifestyle of an inmate that they've been accustomed to should be introduced slowly, months ahead of time with a date of when it's going to be implemented. So it kind of gets inmates, into the fact, yeah, it's coming. It's coming. And then when it finally comes, inmates have tried their best to hopefully kick the habit or adjust to that lifestyle so you're not just taking it away. And by the way, management at a higher level needs to be aware of that. Be careful of the things that you implement that you expect to be done overnight, especially if it affects the lifestyle of that inmate, because you're going to be putting the officers at risk if they're the ones that have to implement it and the inmates have not been introduced to it. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, I think that the smoking one is a really great example. When we did that in California Department of Corrections, there were issues, but by and large, they'd been mitigated away by, number one, the amount of time that we gave them, to be able to know that it was coming, by initially cutting back on those things. And by trying to give them the things that they needed for smoking cessation or whatever. So I think that's one of the the best examples we can give. Anything that you try and do that's going to suddenly be overnight. And there are times where we may have to do that if it's a big enough security threat that we have to institute something like that. But just be aware that when we do that, we're going to need extra bodies out there on the ground to fight through the crap that we're going to have to do. So whenever and wherever it's prudent to do so, it's better to do these things over a long period of time and to try and get the inmates used to it. It's that whole, frog in the boiling water kind of thing. You turn up the flame a little bit at a time so that it never really notices. And so, the whole thing with the smoking and stuff, at least in California and stuff, is that it actually, even though I think it was good because I hated breathing that stuff, it really did just create a whole bunch of new avenues for contraband and more serious contraband. But it was done through cigarettes because it just became so lucrative to be able to, smuggle in tobacco, because you could risk smuggling in tobacco and make the same amount as if you risked smuggling into heroin, and yet the sentencing guidelines were zero for smuggling in the tobacco. So you got to be careful of unintended consequences too when you do this kind of thing. And that was one of the unintended consequences. I don't know if it was worth it or not. I'm not here to talk about that right now, but it's certainly something to consider, especially if you're at that management level. Don't think that there aren't going to be some little hidden things that you can't see. Ask your staff. They'll probably point it out to you.
Yeah, guys, I mean, you could see that with commissary items being taken off, or a change in the cable network service where their channels start to change and they no longer get an ESPN or whatever it is that they're used to. So again, I guess the best way to generalize that out is just they've been used to something, they're used to something, and you get word that you're going to have to take it away. Yeah, be careful. There's a way to introduce that and then still get it, but it may not be something you want to do overnight. Talk to your officers and find out what's the best way to implement this, because again, they're the ones that are going to have to enforce it. All right, Russ is going to love this. We kind of touched on it briefly, but a little bit more specific: tactical distancing.
Okay, curiously enough, one of our sponsors, Guardian RFID, I just did a video for them about tactical distancing. This is the kind of thing that, you'll see it on all of these videos out there. Some officer is standing there and some inmate just runs up and punches him. And, maybe he's got his hands in his pockets, maybe he's got him out there, but it doesn't matter because he's failed to keep an appropriate amount of distance between him and wherever the inmates are. So just make sure that you are able to get that extra split second of reactionary distancing between you and that inmate. So I know some people call it tactical distancing. That's what I've always heard it as in all the DT classes that I took. And some people call it the reactionary gap. Steve Larson, he's real big on that. He'll talk about the reactionary gap all day if you let him. And so just watch that thing, because I've been the victim of it. I've been sucker punched before, and it's no fun. And it ends up, I had a cut on my cornea of my eye. So what you want to do, though, is you want to establish the practice, not just in what's going on out there at the moment, but in your mind, so that you automatically practice it as you go along. And you develop that habit so that when that habit starts to be broken by an inmate, you instantly react to it. You give him some corrective directives, or you move back a little bit to make sure that, he's not going to attack you. But always have it first and foremost in your mind, because if your mind is on other things, and we talked about that a little bit earlier too, remember, if your mind is on other things and you don't have that instilled as part of your everyday practice and as a good habit, then you're going to let that distance start to collapse. And that's when you'll be got. And I've been got enough times that I can tell you it's no fun.
Yeah, combine complacency with tactical distancing and hands in your pockets. I mean, you're not keeping the inmate in proper distance on top of the fact that you have your hands in your pocket. Think about how dangerous that is. And by the way, when you have your hands in your pocket, that kind of invites the inmate to get a little closer to you, because your body language is welcoming that, as opposed to me kind of being here or having my hands out ready for something. It kind of, I mean, you got to have the body language that kind of lets the inmate know subconsciously that I better not get in that person's space. But if you're all lax and I got my hand in my pocket, I'll guarantee you they're more drawn to that, and they're going to want to come closer to that. And your body language is just not presenting anything that wants to push that person back. So again, your body language itself, can welcome a person to move in. I mean, here we are, like Russ said, making sure that we keep ourselves in a distance, but also make sure that your body language doesn't incite them to come in. I mean, that's the key too. We could be in control of both. We could be in control of pushing them out, but we also have to be in control of not allowing them in. Again, hands in the pockets, automatic invite for an inmate to think it's okay to kind of get within that 3 to 6 feet. This is a good one, Russ, because actually sometimes people play jokes in regards to this next thing here, and there's really nothing funny. Touring without your radio. This happens a lot. Some of us will leave it on the desk and go do our rounds, or sometimes officers will take an officer's radio as a joke, and now the person has no way to communicate for assistance. But guys, if you're doing your rounds and you have a radio, if that's how you communicate in case there's a code, and sometimes we get lazy, what happens is we'll put the radio down, which really we should have a radio holder with us at all times. But again, you may have some people that don't, and I'm not a big fan of it, but they'll put the radio down, and let's say they get ready to do their count, they go halfway, and they realize, oh, shoot, I left my radio by my desk. Well, I'll just go ahead and finish my count instead of going back and picking up the radio. And now what happens if something happens, you got no freaking radio. I mean, talk about complacency there, Russ. Russ, I'm sure you definitely have. Russ, as a supervisor, how many times have you ever caught people touring without their radio?
Well, very few, fortunately. But this, again, it's one of those things where you want to develop a good habit. You're going to get ready to go on your tour, right? So the first thing you do when you're ready to, start getting yourself in motion and stuff, you're going to check your battery, right? You're going to also check that you're on the right channel and that you actually have it turned on. Okay. So once you defeat all of those possible things that can go wrong, which is having your radio with you, making sure that the battery is charged, making sure that you have it turned to the right channel, and making sure that it's actually on. I guess those could be in a different order, but that's when you're finally ready to move on out. If you miss any one of those things, you can put yourself in a really bad position. But the starter here, talking about not having the radio, well, I've seen guys do the same stupid thing because they want to get comfortable in their chair. And so they take and they drop their keys in a desk drawer. They take, their OC off and set it to the side. Well, at that point in time, you're not ready, right? And, for you to, have to jump up and you forget it, or you start responding to something and you forget it, that's no bueno, man. We're counting on everyone to get there with their pepper spray, with their keys, with their baton, with their radio and stuff, so that we can get to business. So the easiest thing for me to tell you, and this is how lazy I was, is I just left it on my belt the whole time. Didn't take it off to make myself feel comfortable, just left it on. And you know what? That's the best thing you can possibly do, because if we get an inmate that manages to get a hold of a set of keys, we don't know how that's going to end up. And someone could get hurt, someone could get killed, or someone could, end up having to pay for changing $25,000 worth of locks out on a unit.
Yeah, and guys, if you notice this, the foundation for a lot of the stuff we're discussing is attention to detail. I mean, everything Russ just said about the radio, about the handcuffs before, even just monitoring our own behavior, it's about attention to detail. So again, I mean, if we want to generalize everything, attention to detail is key. So now we're on number 10, then we have 11, and then I have a bonus one, which Russ doesn't know about, that I'm going to put him on the fly. Yep, I got a bonus one coming for you, Russ. It's a good one, I think, but Russ was aware. Russ cheated. Russ knew about these first 11. So I'm like, well, I wonder if Russ is really that good. So I'm going to sneak in a bonus one. And then if Russ is able to do it, Russ was not aware, and Russ gets my respect. He has the right to have a Facebook page with over 5,000 followers. Okay, so this is a good one. And I'm going to tell you why this is a good one. Well, let me start off on that. I got to say it first. If I can, Russ, I'll just introduce this one because I think this is a good one too. Following bad directives. Guys, I just want to say this before Russ goes in. As an officer, you have to be careful of when you say, well, I did this and I know it was wrong, but I was ordered to do it. You're supposed to know and not commit to unethical orders. That may not always be an excuse for you if you're ordered to do something that you know you shouldn't do. I just want people to know that, because a lot of people that are frontline officers, they may feel that, well, yeah, I did something I shouldn't have done, but I was ordered to do it, so I can't be held responsible, only be the supervisor. No, 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 no. Because if it's unethical, you know you're not supposed to do it, you're also expected to not do it. It's tough. It's not that easy to do, but trust and believe, you're not going to be able to just defer that to the supervisor and think you're going to be scot-free by saying, well, supervisor told me to do that, I'm good. No, because you're going to be pushed on like, you shouldn't have done it though. And that's kind of what's expected of us from every level. But Russ, what's your thoughts on following bad directives? I'm sure in your career you gave out a few. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. I just
Who knows? No. Okay, so this is really serious because some of this can potentially breach on things like insubordination, which we don't want to do, but there may be a time and a place where it's appropriate. But this isn't about your feelings with regards to it.
You got to say that again, though, Russ, because that's something that's kind of what the gist of it all is. This will go into. So, Russ, just to kind of put it into the dialogue, you're going to say, you said something that was awesome. Is there a time and place to be insubordinate? Now, I guess kind of like with the dialogue you had, that's key, because a lot of people may not think that they can say no.
Well, you can say no, and the times and places that you can say no, though, you better know your stuff. You better be familiar with state law. You better be familiar with what the Supreme Court of the United States has said about certain issues, and you better be ready to make your case. But the thing where it comes in really is whether what the person has told you is illegal, whether it's unethical, whether it violates some policy, whether it violates some other directive, whether it violates, as I said before, state law. So when we get to those things, yeah, that's an easier call to make, though, than just on a directive that is really super unsafe, because maybe it hasn't been carved out as well as it should be with regards to planning and so forth. And I'm going to give you an example, and this is a real world example from recent events near where I live. In this case, this particular institution had what we call an internal escape. And an internal escape, all that means is an inmate is trying to actively escape, but nobody knows where he is, and they're trying to locate him. At that time, they weren't even really 100% sure that he was still inside the institution, but this particular escape commander took it upon himself to direct several officers to go search different areas of the facility alone. All right. It was a bad call all the way around. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I don't know what these officers were thinking by following that, because as it turned up later, one of these individuals, he actually had walked right by this inmate who was hidden out and trying actively to escape. And it was just by, sheer dumb luck that person, wasn't maybe attacked and killed. The inmate could have had a weapon. I don't know that to be the case in this case, but when someone's willing to risk their life and they're already a lifer, your life is meaningless to them. That's one case. I had another case that personally happened to me, where me and my partner, we were watching grouping between two sets of inmates, and they were against a wall, and these walls had doors in them where we were supposed to let them back in. And anyway, we saw that it was a severe enough situation that we weren't going to go anywhere near it. And my lieutenant came over and ordered us both to go start putting those inmates up. And I said, well, how about you come with us? He was one of those guys, right? So anyway, we initially refused, but this particular lieutenant took it upon himself to say that he was going to write us up for insubordination. The good thing is we had overhead lethal coverage, so we had that going in our favor. But to this day, I'm a little disappointed in myself for not telling him no more sternly, that I needed to wait for backup. Fortunately, me and my partner, we got away with it. But, sometimes, in your career, you do make mistakes like that. But you know what? Don't do it. Be able to, better defend your position.
Yeah, and guys, right off the bat with bad directives, guys, this happens sometimes when it comes to use of force. You may have a supervisor that may give out a directive to use force that may not really be needed. And you got to be mindful. It's at those moments where that can easily cross into criminal. And that doesn't matter if the supervisor told you or not and you did it. You can't defer that to the supervisor and think you're going to be scot free. You're going to be held just as liable as that supervisor, because in the end, you all committed a criminal act. And I've seen it. I've seen it where it could be excessive force, and the officers are quick to say, "Well, I was ordered to do it," thinking that they're going to get that off because the supervisor is going to be the only one that's going to be held responsible at that point. But then you'll see people like, "No, you're responsible for your own actions because you should know enough to know what's excessive and what's not." So that definitely was something, Russ. I think that was yours, Russ. You brought that one into the one. That's a good one.
Yeah,
That
that's why you have to be able to defend what you do or don't do. That's why you should know the law. That's why you should know policy. You should know procedure. You should know those Supreme Court decisions that are, law in and of themselves, so to speak. They're precedential. They set a precedent for what we do all the way into the future, unless it ever gets overridden. So you know what? Take some time to educate yourself. Get educated.
Yeah, and now this one's an easy one. Getting emotionally involved with an inmate, guys. You have to keep. I mean, Russ had the tactical distance. This is kind of like the emotional distance. You can't allow an inmate to ever pull you out of your prescribed role. I mean, you have to always remember you're there to enforce the rules. They're there to follow it. You're not to give them excuses for their bad behavior either. If you find yourself defending an inmate when they've done something wrong, you're getting too involved. If you find yourself thinking about an inmate when you're home for whatever reason, you're too involved. Getting yourself emotionally involved with an inmate, it opens up a whole world of shit that winds up taking you down a path that you will never recover from. And this, to me, is just inmate manipulation 101. I got a book on it. I don't think there's much to hash out here. Just keep that line. I mean, just keep that line. Russ, I mean, simple enough, right, with this one?
Yeah, this is where we have to draw that boundary between our everyday interactions and someone that you start to perhaps view as being friendly or being a friend. And so you know what, if you find yourself spending too much time talking to an inmate, you're in the wrong. That's why we don't share anything personal. We talk to them as little as possible. We do try and develop some, and gosh, I hate this part because I always talk about how bad this is. You do have to develop a rapport to work with them. But, what is rapport building really? What does it ever truly get you? Because I see guys all the time go, well, I'm building rapport because someone told them that that's what they needed to do. And instead, what it does is it opens up the door to manipulation, especially if you're not, really on top of it. I had a supervisor like that once. He was always building rapport by giving contraband back to inmates that we'd taken for ostensibly information that you could get by stepping out and looking around the yard for a minute. So be careful, don't get personally or emotionally invested in any inmate, because you're just going to suffer from being manipulated, which causes a security breach. And people will sit there and try and say, oh, well, I could never be manipulated. I would never do anything wrong. You might never do anything wrong, but could you, look the other way or maybe not do your job to the fullest? That's a different matter from actually, bringing in contraband or falling in love, God forbid. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, this is where we all have to police each other. If you find yourself getting too close to an inmate, or if you see someone getting too close to an inmate, you got to address it. This is the moment where your actions don't just affect you; it affects your brothers and sisters. And if you feel that you're caught up, sorry, guys, report it to your supervisor. Say what you got to say, but you got to remove yourself from that situation, and don't wait till the inmate gets the leverage. and then all of a sudden you're going to go ahead and do the right thing. No, get ahead of it. Don't allow them to pull you that close. We're human. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you can't allow it to happen. And if it does, you have to step up and you have to put yourself in a position where it's like, you know what? I made a bad choice, but I'm not going to let this affect the others who trust me in doing my job. And if you got to report yourself or get yourself out of the job, whatever it is, you know, that's how dangerous it could be when you get emotionally involved with an inmate. The consequences of it all, because at that point you chose a side. I mean, that's just how it is. You chose a side. Okay, Russ, the bonus one. This is the bonus one. So I'm just gonna put it on screen, and then I'm not even gonna introduce. I'm just gonna put it on the screen. You have to read it, and then you can go right into the dialogue. All right. So here it goes. Are you ready, Russ?
I suppose.
Okay. So I'm gonna count down. You ready? So I'm gonna count down and introduce it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna count down from 30. 30.
30.
29. I know that was too long, right?
That's too long. Like 2 seconds, man. I got
All right,
this.
2, 1 there.
Tunnel vision. All right. 2 forms of tunnel vision, all right, that I can think of right off the bat. These are the ones that are truly essential. One is just your focus and energy on what's going on and just not paying attention to other things that might be affecting you. There's a second form of tunnel vision that you really need to be aware of, though, and that's what's caused by stress. Stress under the auspices of, something happening within a critical incident causes a number of different physiological things, one of which is tunnel vision. A couple of the others are things like auditory exclusion, right? And something called tachypsychia, where time seems to speed up or slow down. It can also cause things like you lose your gross motor skills. So that can be especially important if you're out there on a transport or something like that and you're handling a firearm, because, I mean, what's the finest little bit of thing that we ever do is, that trigger movement. But getting back to the tunnel vision thing, tunnel vision in the case of when it happens with tachypsychia under a critical incident is where you actually truly can't see. All of your brain is focused on just what's directly in front of you, and you can end up being blasted from the side or from the back and not paying attention. This is where training is really important, whether it's, with your pepper spray or whether it's with your baton or a firearm or anything like that. You want to get used to dealing with what's in front of you. If you're firing a gun, you're firing a gun. If you're firing your pepper spray, it's that. If you're having to, strike with your baton and then cover up, get used to whatever you're doing to checking behind you, checking your sides, checking your six. And if you're out there with a crew, assign someone to watch your back, because this really happens, and it's easy to get into where the tachypsychia takes over and you just have, nothing but tunnel vision in front of you. When it's not happening with regards to tachypsychia in a critical incident, you want to make sure that your focus is constantly, in front of you, around you, behind you. Don't get stagnant. Don't put yourself in a position where you're assuming that everything is okie dokie. You're mute.
Guys, there's not much I can add to that. I mean, basically, yeah, even when you're running to a code or whatever it is, sometimes before you jump in, what are you running into? What are the details here? What's happening? And sometimes we get so caught up in running into the code that we really don't know what we're running into. And then we ourselves wind up putting ourselves at risk, So again, I love what Russ said, the energy, the stress. I mean, this environment could kill you with anxiety, not knowing what's going to happen from one moment to the next. And, you could wind up freezing because you're so tunnel vision. So, yeah, guys, I think that was 11 mistakes. I think that was great. And then we got the bonus one, which made it 12. Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say thank you, everyone, for watching this video. I hope you found it instructive. I hope you found it useful. I hope that you can put it to good use and start practicing either what we've told you about, trying to develop good habits, or at least knowing what to avoid out there in any given tactical situation.
Right. And Russ, it's always great having you on the show. You add so much to it, and hopefully we could do a live this week. I'm thinking maybe Friday night we'll figure it out. But this was really a good topic. Hopefully, if you guys utilize it for the training, it would be great to give out to our rookie COs. I think this will be a video for them. But as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time we post up a video. As always, guys, stay safe.